If you know me, then you know there was a time in my life where vacation spending felt so exciting in the moment and so stressful the second I got home. And as embarrassed as I am to admit this, it took a few experiences for me to really learn this. I remember in my early 20s, I went on a girls' trip to Las Vegas, and at the time, I knew I probably couldn't afford that trip the way I was approaching it, but I went anyways, and I didn't have a clear budget. I didn't have much in my accounts to begin with. I was just spending based on what felt good in the moment. And when I got back, reality hit. I was scrambling to figure out how I was going to cover my normal expenses, including rent. And that feeling, that post vacation stress, it stayed with me because it did not match the experience I thought I was creating. I thought I was enjoying my life. I thought I was making memories. But what I was actually doing was borrowing peace from my future self to enjoy the present. Let me say that again. I was borrowing peace from my future self to enjoy the present. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about the truth about vacation spending, what actually causes people to overspend, why guilt shows up so often around travel, and how to approach your trips in a way that lets you enjoy them fully without throwing your finances off track, of course. Because guilt free spending, especially on vacation, isn't about spending less, it's about spending with a plan. So, that experience I just described, it's a pattern I see with a lot of my clients when it comes to vacation spending. And I think that's because vacations are emotional. You are in a new place, you want to experience everything. You don't want to feel restricted, you don't want to miss out. So, it becomes very easy to disconnect from your usual money habits. And then on the other side of that, I've also seen women swing too far in the opposite direction. They plan the trip, but they feel anxious the entire time. They're overthinking every purchase. They're second guessing every decision. They're not fully enjoying the experience because they're so worried about the money. So now the vacation doesn't even feel like a break. It just feels stressful in a different kind of way. And what I've learned over time, both through my own experiences and working with clients, is that most people are operating in one of those two extremes. They are either overspending and dealing with the consequences later, or they're restricting so much that they cannot even enjoy the experience. But I am here to tell you very happily that there's actually a middle ground. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. Because at this point in my life, I still travel, I still enjoy my trips, I still spend my money on experiences that matter to me, but I do it from a completely different place. I plan for it. I decide what I'm willing to spend ahead of time. I save for it. I stay connected to my numbers while I'm there. And because of that, I can come home from a trip and not feel stressed, not feel behind, not feel like I have to recover financially. And let me tell you, traveling and worrying about money is not the way to go. When you can travel and enjoy your vacation and come home and you know the bills are covered, there is no better way to enjoy it. And that's exactly what I want for you. So let's dive into three core shifts to make for guilt free vacation spending. Shift number one, plan your spending before the vacation, not during it. One of the biggest mistakes people make with vacation spending is waiting until they're on the trip to figure things out. And honestly, I get it. I have been there. You're busy leading up to the trip. You're excited. You just want to get there. If anybody understands that excitement leading up to a trip, it's definitely me. But when you don't plan ahead, every decision while you're on vacation becomes a real time decision. And real time decisions are usually emotional decisions. What I've learned over time, especially after all of the trips where I've overspent, is that the more I decided ahead of time, the easier everything felt during the trip. And more importantly, the more I decide and pay for ahead of time, the better off I am. So now for me, whenever I plan a vacation, I am thinking through what are my major expenses going to be? So flights, hotel, transportation, and those things are usually handled first. Those are the things that I take care of first and foremost when I know I'm going on a trip. Then I look at what the trip will look like day to day while I'm there. Am I doing activities? Am I going to nice dinners? Do I have exploration days? And from there, I can rough guesstimate my daily spending number. Now, that's not to restrict myself. So I know it's a spending number, essentially a spending limit. Again, that's not a form of restriction. That is giving myself a guide. That is letting me know here's what I have to work with. So, if you think setting a spending decision, a spending limit, or a spending budget is a form of restriction, let's shift that mindset. Because when you have already worked through what's reasonable for your money, your situation, you don't have to keep asking yourself, is this okay in the moment? And this is something I have done for years now. Even when I don't have a trip planned, I'm actually setting money aside for travel. It's something I save for regularly because I know I'm always going to go on a trip. And when I do end up booking something, I'm not starting from zero. I'm building from a place of preparation. And I feel like that alone changes how you experience the trip. You're not trying to figure it out while you're there. You're not stressing about the financials. You've already done that work. And believe me, that definitely adds to the excitement. Make sure you check out episode 30, Vacation Planning on a Budget, for even more tips on how I actually plan my vacation spending. Moving on to shift number 2, decide your experience, not just your budget. I think this is where a lot of people can miss the mark because they focus so much on the numbers that they forget to focus on the experience. And when you only focus on the budget, it's way too easy to feel restricted. And that's because you're thinking in terms of what you can't do, right? But when you focus on the experience first, the spending becomes intentional and worthwhile. So instead of asking yourself, how do I spend less on this trip? Or how do I spend the least amount of money as possible on this trip? Ask yourself, what kind of experience do I really want to have on this trip? Do you want relaxation? Do you want fancy dinners? Do you want activities and excursions? Do you want a little mix of everything? Because not every day needs to look the same, right? One thing that has worked really well for me is balancing my days. Now, I struggled with this initially. I am a Virgo, so I'm very structured, I'm very routine. My partner, my fiance, he is a Libra, so he's much more um, easy breezy, go with the flow. And I used to kind of plan our vacations down like to the hour. And he sort of taught me that it's okay to have some space for things to happen naturally. And I love that. Now, when I plan vacations, some days are more structured because I need that, right? Maybe I have an activity planned or a nicer dinner, but then I make sure that other days are just lighter. They're exploration days, they're beach days, they're walking around, taking things in. And it's nice to know that those days naturally just cost less. So I'm not actually restricting myself. I am just being intentional about how I'm structuring the experience. And that really makes a huge difference. I think the goal is to make sure that there is a plan, but there's room for flexibility with the plan. Because when you've already decided what matters most, you don't feel pulled in every direction. You're not trying to do everything, right? You're doing the things that actually align with you and what you want. And that means spending your time and money in alignment, which is so important on vacation. Okay, shift number 3, Staying connected to your spending without obsessing. This is the piece that ties everything together because even with a plan, even with intention, things can still shift while you're on the trip. And I think that's normal. I mean, that's kind of how life goes, right? But what keeps things from getting out of control is staying connected. Again, not obsessively, right? Not checking your accounts every single hour, but just having a simple awareness of what's happening with your money. This is something I do on every single trip. At some point during the day, usually at the end of the day, I'll quickly run through what I spent. I'm actually looking at my transactions, and I'm not doing this to judge myself, right? I'm just doing this to stay grounded and make sure that I'm on track with what I intended to spend. Because if I notice that maybe I spent a little more one day than I thought or planned for, I can adjust the next day. Maybe I just keep the next day lighter, or maybe I skip something that really doesn't matter as much. That is how you stay in control without feeling restricted. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. They either don't check at all, right? I'll figure it out when I get home, and end up overspending, or they check too much and create anxiety. We also don't want to be stressed out about money while we're on vacation. Again, there's a middle ground. When you're aware, but still present, that's what we want. And that's what allows you to enjoy the trip and feel good about spending. Another thing I like to do is use like a dedicated credit card or a specific account for my vacation spending while I'm on the trip. It just helps keep everything related to my trip in one place. And I think it makes looking at my spending just a lot easier to do. Okay. If you take anything from this episode, please, please, please let it be this. Vacation spending doesn't have to come with guilt. But it does require intention. It does require planning ahead, deciding what matters, staying connected along the way. And when you do those three things, you stop feeling like your trip is something you have to recover from. It becomes something that just naturally fits into your life, not something that throws everything off. At the end of the day, your goal isn't just to go on the trip, it's to enjoy the trip, but also to feel good when you come home. You shouldn't feel stressed. You shouldn't feel behind. You shouldn't feel like now you got to fix things. You should feel grounded, clear, and still in control of your money. And that's what real financial control and confidence looks like. Not avoiding spending, but knowing how to handle it when you do spend. Now, if after listening to this episode, you're realizing that you want more structure around your money, not just for vacations, but for everyday life, that's exactly what we build and focus on in my coaching program. We create systems and routines that support how you actually live, how you want to live. And the goal is to enjoy your life without constantly second guessing your finances. So if that's something that you're ready for, you can request a free money call with me. I will link to that in the show notes. And remember, you don't have to choose between experiences and financial peace. You just have to learn how to plan for both.